I am delighted to introduce to you the speaker for the Nature Journal Club workshop this month. This is Kate Rutter. She is a... Okay, come on.
Hello, that's right. I need a tape line. Thank you.
This is Kate Rutter. And she is the leader of the meetup group Sketchnotes SF. She is a nature journaler. She's also a graphic facilitator, and I am absolutely delighted to have her leading this workshop. I learned about sketchnoting a few years ago on one of our trips. Somebody said, "Oh, that journal page looks sort of like Sketchnotes to me," and I said, "What's that?" And they gave me a few little ideas. When you'll have much better ideas by the end of this workshop. I started looking into it, and I realized that there's this wonderful area of inspiration of material and things you can do in your journal that is very closely parallel to what we are doing. And a lot of things there that we can steal ideas directly from. Just as the way that nature journaling helps you pay attention to things that you observe and document those in your nature journal, this process helps you pay attention and document things that you are thinking about. So if you ever go to a lecture or go to a conference and you're kind of, oh wow, that's a really interesting idea. I'm now starting to sketchnote TED Talks. I'm starting to sketchnote anything that I would like to pay attention to. It turns out if you watch a TED Talk and you just sort of sit there kind of like, oh wow, how inspiring. You are entertained for the moment, but then your brain goes select all, delete. And later on you're like, oh yeah, didn't I see that? But I don't remember what I was talking about. I think I've seen that. But this process allows you to remember things so much more vividly. It is a really high percentage area for us. There's also a lot of ideas here which we can steal and incorporate directly into our nature journaling. Today as I was driving over, I was thinking about I've got a friend who's going to be journaling on the Pacific Crest Trail, and if you took a lot of these sketchnoting ideas and applied it to that experience, what those pages could look like. So you'll see lots of ideas of ways to steal ideas and improve what we can do in our nature journals to really show what we're thinking about. So thank you so much for being willing to do this with you. I have been sitting in on every workshop so far and am absolutely in love with this philosophy and approach. I think you're going to have a lot of fun today. If this is your first time joining the Nature Journal Club, I think you'll see that there's a lot of really good material here that you can just grab and go with. And so, Kate, thank you so much.
Thank you. What an absolute pleasure to be here. Now I have to re-mic up. So hang on. Give me a moment. All right. Cool. So as Jack said, I am part of a world of sketchnoters, which is also, it's so interesting. It's been this parallel community that's grown up. Sketchnoting has been around under that term since about 2001 or 2. It's been part of a visual note-taking practice that, of course, goes back, actually, I would like to say before words, when we were making pictures on cave walls. So, long tradition there. But in 2008, this man named Mike Rohde started promoting that term as a way to take visually oriented notes of information. And then in 2013, he published a book called the Sketchnote Handbook. And that really gave us all a banner to kind of connect to and to share information with. So when you get home, you could do one search on Google Images for Sketchnote, and you will see just the broad depth and array of inspiration and good ideas to steal, because there's a lot of people out doing this work. And I know there's a lot of people out in this world doing nature journaling as well, and that's our community here today, and I'm proud to be part of that community too. But I'd love to take just a couple minutes, actually 1 minute, maybe 2 minutes, we've got a bigger group, and hello, welcome. And go around and find out who's in the room so that we can all arrive here together and understand a little about each other. So to do this in a nice, keep it snappy, there's going to be some constraints. The first is, I'm going to ask you to say your name, the city you live in, and one thing you love about nature journaling. And if you've never done it before, one thing you think you'll love about nature journaling, okay? And we're gonna go around and do it in 2 minutes, and I will actually time you so that we can have a good success as a group, our first group success. And in order to keep the timing going, what we wanna do is reduce any of that, oh, whose turn is it? So I'm gonna cue up the room, and then you'll just know, you'll pass the conversation, we'll make it snappy. So we are going to start, if you would have the honor with you, and then we're gonna hop right behind you, and then over to your left, and then behind you in the chamois shirt, to the flowered shirt, back to that back row, love the back row, and then over to camera guy, and then to the blue puffy jacket, and then over green, brown, flowers, and pink, and then we'll come back to Jack, and after Jack, I'll wrap the room. You guys think we can do it?
Yeah.
Yes. Excellent. All right, let's get that timing started. And I think we can beat the time of the other group earlier today, not that it's a competition, but if it were, we could probably rally to that. So I'm going to start now and set it for 2 and kick it off.
My name is Frances. I live in Campbell, and this is my first nature journaling, and I like it because I'm out of pretty pictures.
Yes.
Marilyn, Sunnyvale. I see so much more when I sketch and write.
Beautiful.
Rosa, I live in San Clara, and it forces to look more in detail.
Yes.
Down Los Altos Hills, and I love the nature sketching because I just discover so much I didn't even know.
Beautiful.
Jan Hill, Santa Cruz. As someone who has not been a drawer, when there's something in front of me, I have a little hope that I will be able to put that down on paper.
Excellent. Yes.
John, San Jose, gets me out of the house.
Mary Ashtots, and it completely absorbs me.
Ashok Khosla, Palo Alto, and I just keep off on nature. So.
I'm Joan in Mountain View, and I love the idea of combining writing with art, and I love birds.
Yes.
I'm Cheryl from Los Altos, and I, like you, enjoy the idea of pretty plants, flowers with writing. It'll be easy to go back through and look at to bring back wonderful memories.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Janet Van Zoring, Cupertino, and it's just so much fun. I'm Barbara, San Jose, and I write as a profession, and so I've taken a lot of art classes, but John's actually the first person who's put it in a left-brain way that I can understand.
And I'm Mare, Sunnyvale, and I just love all of the patterns and colors and shapes that I get to express through the art.
And Jack, bring us in.
And I'm Jack. I'm from San Mateo, and I love the way that this process engages my attention, my curiosity, and my memory.
Perfect timing, yay, yes, we did it. Excellent, sweet. All right, so a little bit about me. So I'm Kate, I live in Emeryville, and what I love about nature journaling is it helps me really savor the world at a different tempo than my business life, my home life, my community life. So it's super exciting. And I'm gonna start out with a couple examples of how my nature journaling practice, how my sketchnoting practice kind of interact, because we want to be able to use all the skills we need to enjoy the things we love the most. So many of the things I make look more like this, just simple line drawings or pen drawings, trying to understand what is it about this life form or this flower, how is it structured, what does it do? And what I love about Protea is that they actually can show you many phases of development on the same bush. So that's great, you know, it's really good to do that. Other things look more like this. So this is more of an expression of one tree and one type of tree. This was done for the tree blitz that resulted in the brochure. And I also had a lot more fun, like really trying to understand all the different parts and pieces of this tree. So that's the nature journaling side. My work looks more like this. And this is actually a sketch note, a visual note I took from one of Jack's talks at the retreat that he hosted, which was in October last year. And you can see that even though there's mostly content, there's little pictures of people and some small little expressions of snapshots. So it's words, mostly words, but some of the structure and some of the directional elements kind of bring it to a different sense of memory in my brain. So that's a lot of what sketch notes look like. Everybody has a different style. You'll see lots of examples. We'll learn from examples. In the business world, My sketch notes look more like this. I'm always trying to focus on what is the one thing this lecture, or in this case a webinar, was trying to communicate, and is there a phase or some things that people can pull out of it, lessons they can pull out of it? How would I make those visual and understandable? But you can see a lot of words, right? And lastly, this is a much more refined one. There's actually cards of this over on the table for you to take with you. And this came from an article in Harvard Business Review. Now, I can tell you it was a great article about how to have a creative culture, and you could spend half an hour, 45 minutes reading it, but then there's that Control-Alt-Delete, right? Then it's like, oh, there was that thing by that gal at that place. And it turns out that the structure of the information had a visual kind of element to it, and I could not sleep until I actually was able to put it into something that I could refer to over and over, and that's really internalized those ideas for me. So that's kind of the perspective and the technique of it. And Sketchnotes is nothing really more than just visual note-taking in a different kind of way, maybe than nature journaling. So at its bare bones, a sketchnote is just using images, using text, diagrams, pictures, and layout to capture information in order to improve understanding and recall. Okay? And however you do that, that's great. When you communicate them to others, what tends to happen is this. On conceptual information, people might have very different pictures in their head, but when you make that picture, it starts to share how people understand those ideas. So it's super powerful as a communication tool as well. But why would you do it? Well, you can externalize and clarify your ideas, even when they're just hunches or inspirations you internally have. It just helps to get it out. You can also communicate those ideas then with others. And you can highlight emotional content. So this is something that I'm sad about the computer and how we are using so many text-based things to communicate is, other than emoticons and bold or italic and some text flavors, it's really difficult to get imagery and emotion into written form. And with the sketchnote, it's much easier to do that. And then you can also share and celebrate them. So if you're ever at a lecture and you start taking visual notes, I can guarantee someone sitting around you will say, "What are you doing? I've never seen anyone take notes like that." And that gives you an opportunity to spread the love of visuals and nature journaling, however you express your craft, with someone else who might not have seen them able to do that or know why that would be helpful. So it's super awesome in that regard. But I think you're probably here to say, well, how can I use it? This is all great, but it's maybe for others. So when you start doing sketchnote techniques, you just have more opportunities to use your skills. More things become visual. You can do a grocery list this way, you can do your kid's schedule, you can do your calendar. You just start making more visual things, and that will automatically increase your level of capability and skill. You also add your inner voice to the page. And on this one, I have a hunch that when I'm looking at someone else's nature journal page, I care maybe less about understanding that thing and more about understanding how they understood that thing. And I can see the world through their eyes. And when someone has a question, I wonder about, or what if, then I find myself asking that question. That curiosity is infectious. It makes me want to go out and find answers. So that's interesting. The other is you can actually hone your page layout skills. Page layout skills for a sketchnote are a little harder or more rigorous because you have so much information, so many words. So you use different tools, and that'll actually help you lay out your pages for nature journaling in maybe a more interesting or a more clear way. And lastly, you can increase your speed. A lot of sketchnoters are taking notes from live talks or videos or for other types of things where the words are faster than the hand. And over time, you just start building up your pace. And it might not seem that within a nature journaling practice, so much of it is deep observation and reflection, right? So it feels like it has a different tempo. And then that bird takes off, you're like, whoa, that was quick. So being able to use work fast and slow is really helpful. And this will help with that. So that is what we are going to do. And to get there together, we're going to do a quick intro of sketchnoting basics, some materials and warm-up, and I brought some materials in case the things you brought don't feel like they wouldn't be as helpful as a tool. We're going to do some rapid rounds, which are structured activities to help you practice some of these techniques. And then we're going to do a practice session from a TED Talk, and then we'll close with a gallery and a critique. So any questions before we kick that off? Ready to go? All right. Yay. So sketchnote basics, I'm almost embarrassed. They're so clear, but they're only obvious in hindsight. So I do want to cover them. The components of a sketchnoting practice are words and image. And the words do most of the heavy lifting. But you can do cool visual things with words too, and we'll talk about that. It's really a listening practice in the same way that or in an analogous way to how a nature journal is an observation practice. So this is about listening or thinking or synthesizing inside your head. And you want it to capture the big ideas. You can't possibly capture everything, and you wouldn't want to, because then where's the focus? So you only want to capture the big ideas. And listening for those big ideas will happen more easily over time, but it's a great practice to get started with. And you also just want to have fun and learn. Like this, I'm just declaring that this is a judgment-free zone, and that we are judgment-free people, and so there is no self-judgment about the quality of your work. It's all in the service of learning. Another difference that sketchnotes have is they tend to use different kind of visual elements. Some of these you'll see in nature journals, but a lot of them are more unique, like more fanciful type of banners or frames, arrows and more symbolic representations of things rather than actual rendering or detailed rendition, visions of things. You'll see things like arrows shaping direction, although I think in Jack's book, the section on arrows, like that is amazing. You should totally absorb that too. And dividers, simple dividers or connections. It's amazing how much a simple line between two chunks of text can build a connection between them. So that's it. That's like our sketchnoting basics, because you guys already have a pretty high degree of visual capability already. As far as materials and warm-up, here are some common materials for a sketchnote practice. They're not that much different from a good sketched book and some materials for a nature journalist. I do want to highlight that these are the 3 favorite pens. I actually don't have the gel pens, but hold on to keep the thought of the gray marker, because these are good enough materials. And if for today you want to try some things out, you would feel that your sketchbook or the materials you brought might be too constraining, or you only put a specific type of note in your book, we've got plenty of white paper up here, totally go crazy, and we're not going to run out. But I want to go through these pens a little bit. This is called a Sharpie pen, not to be confused with the ironically called fine point Sharpie, which is not nearly as fine as the Sharpie pen. But this is a good black line, and it's heavy enough that you have to forgive yourself, because once you put it down, it's not going anywhere. And there is something that happens when you can't be tentative that increases your speed and kind of makes you learn a little faster. So if you don't have a basic black pen that you enjoy using, if you're working primarily in pencil, for example, I would suggest that you grab one of these from our grab bag. And the second pen is this gray pen, which you use very lightly as an additive. Think about this as if you could add shadow to things or a little bit of depth. This is what this pen does. It's a 40% gray marker. It will bleed through, so if you need to, you might need to use a backer sheet in your sketchbook. But it has 2 points, a broad tip and a fine tip. And it just adds some lift to things. So I'll have these out so you can practice with the gray marker if you want to do the warm-ups. But I would advise that when we're actually capturing the notes and information, you either use your regular pen or plain black pen.
Is the gray one a Sharpie?
It is not. It is called a Dick Blick Studio Pen, and it's available at Dick Blick either online. There are other ones called Tombow and Copic. Copic is a little smelly, and Tombow is nice but more expensive. It's got a brush tip, which some people love and other people find hard to control. So I'm going to pass these 2 bags around, and you can take whatever you find helpful out of them. I think there's enough for everybody, but if not, we need to invoke the sharing philosophy of the community, and so that you can maybe trade back and forth. All right. So even as those are going around, we can get started on the warm-up. Does everyone have something, if the bag comes around, that they'll be able to use? Like, anybody need any paper? Actually, let me just put some of this out in the middle, and we can declare each other paper helpers in case people... This is white letter computer paper. There is absolutely nothing fancy about it. There you go, and you can just set that back there. All right. So let's just get our hands moving. Really basic warm-up activities. You're going to fill a page with lines, circles, triangles, rectangles, and shapes. There's no real constraints to this. What I want you to do, though, is try and fill that page. So for, I'm going to say 2 minutes, just fill up a page with lines. Lines, circles, rectangles, and shapes. Okay? makes the sound. It's funny, this is the thing where I can hear the feedback of the sound. I'm like, those are big circles, excellent. And think about making those marks from your fingers and your wrist and your elbow and your shoulder. You'll have a different quality of line depending on where it's coming from on your body. You can also notice that you might have a natural, when you draw a line, it's top down or bottom up. So try it the other direction. When you draw a circle, is it always clockwise? Why don't you try counterclockwise? See how that feels. This is your chance to really loosen up. Sometimes the caps on the gray markers are a little fussy, so make sure you really muscle it to pull it apart and then really snap it back on. That is our sound of done. I declare you warmed up wherever you're at. All right. So go ahead and flip over to a new page or grab a new sheet of paper, and we're going to start out our rapid rounds. We're going to do 3 different heats of these. The first is words, the second is things and ideas, and the third is people and emotion. So starting for words, we're going to do a practice called mood words. And mood words are almost visual automatopoeias. You want to write the word in the way that communicates something else about that word. So they're great with adjectives, right? Because adjectives automatically are trying to build a picture or an energy to them. So you have things like whisper has a lot of flowy lines, or solid looks like it's built and it's got dimension and heft. And so this is what we're going to do, and I'll give you some prompts. But to see it actually in practice, here's a sketch note, and I know that the text might be small, but way up here, there's this little like failure. It's got red around it. It's kind of sinking down, right? So even in the direction that you write a word can really communicate it. Maybe it's a breeze. Maybe the seed pops, and the word pop is actually open. So that's a sketchnote example. For a nature journal example, this is one from the East Bay Sketcher meetup that I was at in November in Tilden, and it was cold, 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 cold. Even without the color, giving it a cool, like, icy feel, it's got these, like, icebergs or kind of these things, the icicles hanging off of it. And it says so much more than, like, it was really cold, right? Like, this is a statement. And it becomes part of the overall communication of feeling of being in there in the page. So those are a couple of examples in 2 different practices. What we're going to do is I'm going to give you a word prompt, and you will have 20 seconds to write that word in a way that feels like the word. And we're going to do 4 of these. And if you have space on your page, I do them big enough because I'm going to ask you to hold them up for other people to see, and I want people throughout the whole group to be able to learn from your work too. So you might want to grab a fresh sheet or a new page, and we'll get started. All right. Yeah, is there a good round in the bag? If there were no more in the bag, then I can.
So this also try to see if these pens go home with Kate. When she started yesterday, there were 2 really big bags.
Does not get back in the bag.
No, yours I gave to her.
Okay, great. Oh, yours is great.
We have a pen apocalypse going on.
Yeah,
Scary. All right, so 20 seconds. I'm going to give you a word prompt, and I'll say it out loud, and then you will make it like the word feels. All right, let's get started. The first one is soft. Soft. right, the next one is moist. Moist. You see that in nature a lot. Moist. The next one is bouncy. Bouncy. You can think of other things that are bouncy, and maybe there's some visual attributes you could add to the lettering. And our last one is quick. Quick. All right, wrap that up. And now we're going to do a quick share. And the process for a quick share in a room like this is I'm going to ask you to put your work over your head, up high so people can see it. And then as you turn around to look at other people's things, your work will also turn and they can see you from throughout the room. Okay, so hold it nice up high. You can face it, and then as you turn around so you can see the people's work behind you, then you can kind of see. And look at all those trends. We've got, like, quick has these short kind of flippy lines, and bouncy often has these energy lines to it. Moist looks gooey and kind of, yeah, like it's melting, right? And soft. So all of these different visual ways. I know there's never enough time in this workshop. But thanks for being quick about it. But all of these ways, and so as you read things or as you see animals or birds or nature do something, what does a breeze look like, etc. So our next rapid round is things. And things are observable stuff you can see in the world. For people who've never drawn before or who are just getting started, sometimes they find it helpful to have a set of building blocks or kind of core elements to assemble and put together and think about shapes that are really complicated in terms of more simpler shapes. So if that works for you, great. If you find this constraining, then you don't have to use it. But all of these kinds of simple things, these basic everyday objects, can be built using a series of these different simple shapes. Excellent. All right. Thank you. Do you need a replacement?
I was looking for the thin one. I have these, but I was looking for the thin one. That's all right.
Right. Okay, if anyone has a thin one to share, maybe you can get that done. And so for these, you'll notice that as part of a nature journaling practice, we're really concerned about accuracy and like what does that thing really look like? And this is not that. This is the counterpoint to that. This is the idea of a house or the idea of a car. Who could fit in that car? The idea of a donut, which is always appealing. So we're just talking about symbols, very simple shapes. And as you build a visual vocabulary of these, you'll go back to the same shapes over and over. So it's really a nice additive type of practice to have. So what we're going to do is things. And we're talking about this level of drawing, okay? Not a lot of detail. And to see this in practice, I want to share a sketch note from a colleague that I've worked with. Now, there's a lot of words here. She uses these as her own memory prompts. And she likes everything on one page. But if you'll notice, despite all of these words, she's got a little factory up here, because that was what the concept that the speaker was talking about, and a little cat with meow. And she told me later, I wanted it to say meow so people wouldn't think it was a mouse. I'm like, works, totally works, right? And then down here, here's a little house. Now, with steps up to it. And so it's interesting that even a very dense text-oriented note can use these little moments to bring more visual interestingness to it and more memory for her. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a prompt, a word prompt, and what you're going to do is in 10 seconds, you're going to make the simplest form you can that would communicate that. So we're going to do 4, and these are things that you'll probably see every day. You guys ready to go? Great. Let me grab the timer, and the first one is journal. Journal. seconds can be quick. The next one is fire hydrant. Fire hydrant. Next one, paper airplane. Paper airplane. And the last one, bicycle. Bicycle. All right. So shake it out. Sometimes you can get really intense about it, so shake that out. And before we go on to ideas, Jack, should I do the bicycle? Yeah. Okay, I'll do the bicycle. This is like off the book, but that's okay. So I struggle with bicycles, and weirdly enough, they come up a lot. You'd be surprised. So a friend taught me to draw a bicycle, and it's a recipe that works for me every time. And you're happy to follow along if you wanna give it a try. So start with your 2 circles, right? Kind of par for the course. And then in the middle of each circle, starting in the middle of one circle, you're going to come up and do a trapezoid, top and down. The next, you have a crucial decision to make, which is which way is the bicycle going? Okay. So you want to start with the back wheel and put your pen in the middle of the back wheel and draw a line halfway between the wheels in the direction that the bike's going. So kind of like that. Now from here it gets easy. All you want to do is connect the corners to this line. And that will give you actually the structure of the bicycle frame. From here it's easy to a little piece up in a slight circle is your seat. Another piece up, a little half circle is your handlebars. Totally serviceable bike. Now if you want to get more detailed, you can do all kinds of other things, like add more tire action. You can add little banner, like when you're a little kid. You can make that as fancy a bike as you'd like. Baseball cards? Oh yes, spokes. That clippy sound. Or a bright, nice reflector like we used to have. Good times, rocking the bike. That said, you don't need to, because what you were able to communicate super quickly was the idea of a bike. And that's often good enough. So there's your Bike 101. Okay, let's change modes a bit. So all the things we just did are stuff you can see, kind of deconstruct. But what about ideas? Ideas you kind of can't, yeah, right? Ideas you can't see, you can't really observe them. So you'll need a more symbolic visual language for some of these things. So when we talk about ideas, you're thinking, what would be the essence or the concept behind that thought? Light bulb, that's a very common symbol, so you just need to learn to draw it. It also might be like metaphoric. So how are we going to meet our annual targets? Well, you could draw a target with an arrow in them. So you can use visual metaphors that simplify the concept and still communicate. You'll also tend to use a lot of boxes, arrows, kind of various different light lines going towards each other. So let's take a look at what that looks like. In a sketch note, this is by a colleague, Maria, there was a very rich discussion of, in the startup world, risk and reward. And if you take a lot of risk, you can have a lot of reward. And the relationship. And she was able to communicate that by a 2x2 grid that covered all of the things that this longer conversation communicated. And so now this has become a snapshot in her mind to understand that concept in all its richness, but it's very simple. In the nature journaling world, I really love Hannah Hinchman's work on sound, because she does bird sounds as visuals and bird studies, and these are ideas. This is not something you can observe, but the way that she puts it through, you can almost get a cadence in your brain of what she's trying to communicate. There's other ideas, like weather or storm or environment or things that happen in the natural world too, but I think this is the most direct example that we can learn from. So for our next prompts, we're going to take 30 seconds. And this gives you the first 10 seconds to think, what's going on here and how would I communicate that? And 20 seconds to put it down on the page. And I'm going to give you a word prompt. There's going to be 4. So you can turn over a new sheet, or you can keep going on the same one if you have space. And you'll have 30 whole seconds for this. You guys ready? Okay. Our first one is awareness. Awareness. All right, the next one is environment. Environment. Next one, explore. Explore. And our last one is share. Share. All right, wrap that up. And speaking of sharing, we're going to do a quick share. This time, let's give a little bit more time, and we'll do that by having less to look at. So why don't people pair up and share their ideas? Just show your work to someone who's nearby. Once you've seen it, if you want to turn and share with someone else nearby, we'll just kind of keep people turning and moving. So. Oh, let me take some. Take a look. Interesting.
That's a good one.
See? Oh, a hand. Of course. Oh, and the thing. Oh, well, yes. I like the way you think.
Stuck on explore.
Explore. That's so hard. I've seen binoculars. I've seen a magnifying glass. I've seen a path. All these are from people in workshops earlier today. So, yeah. Oh, perfect. Yes, climbing a mountain. This unknown challenge. Yeah, very clear. Oh, fun. Could I look? Please. Okay, judgment-free zone, though. You know that.
I remember you from October. I think you came to see with us.
I did. Yes. We were at the retreat. Oh, it's so good to see you again. Yay. There were a lot of people there. I'm like now coming back. Oh, funny. All right. Okay. So interesting to see the patterns that emerge on this, and where the challenges are. Explore can be hard. Well, all of these can be a little tricky, and they're also going to be unique to you. There's definitely patterns that emerge. I have to laugh because I was at a workshop with a bunch of business people, and value was one that came up. And some people had hearts, other people had bags of money. You know, I was like, wow, that's really broad. So, you know, or success and challenge. Some successes were like people holding hands, and others were like, you know, someone like holding a trophy. And so all these different associations, really interesting. And fun to do. So I encourage you, there's some very good word lists in some of the books, and also I actually have a whole list of words I like to practice with on my own. Once you develop a visual vocabulary, then anytime you, for example, have a challenge with the flower, you're like, I'm going to put the challenge icon on there, so I know that it was a real sense of accomplishment. You can use this visual vocabulary for yourself. So our next section is people. And we're going to do what we call star people. This is pretty much standard in the sketchnoting or in the graphic recording communities. And we're going to draw people that look like this. This is not portraiture. This is not accuracy. These are symbolic figures. And keeping them simple is the key to keeping them symbolic. So here's a couple places that this type of figure takes form. In the sketchnote of the card shown earlier, there's this under challenge, there's these two figures that are holding hands, and there's like a sparkly around it, right? Like they've achieved something together. And very simple, but it's a person, it's a picture of a person within this bigger composition. For nature journaling, one of the field trips that Jack hosted that I went on in January until then, we were going along this path, and here's Jack as a star person, like bending down, helping us understand a pile of poop. So, and all I wanted to do, Jack was not wearing a hat that day. He probably wasn't even wearing a backpack. He might have had his, regulation bag slung back. But I needed to show the way he was holding his head so that it was clear that that figure was looking at it. And so it was super quick, but it kind of, poop not to scale, but it kind of brings me back into all of us clustering around and learning about this interesting natural item. So totally applicable.
Just a quick update on that. I was wondering if this might have been evidence of a deer with scours, but after looking around a little bit more, my new theory is, or the new hypothesis is that it is turkey poop. Wild turkey. So.
Really? I never observed wild turkey food right now.
Walk out with Jack. So to do these kinds of star people, I'm going to do this draw along. And for this, I'm going to take us off the shiny light. You can follow along. There's, again, a recipe or a system to it. And in your workbook or on a sheet of paper, I want you to draw a circle that's about the size of a dime. Okay? And underneath that, a little ways away, a line that's just a little wider than the circle. The head and the shoulder base. And then from that, coming from the shoulder, you go down for a point and up for a point, and then down about twice as far as the arm. So an arm and another arm, as someone earlier said, for a point, and then back up for a point to about the arm. Trust me, it's a very forgiving form. You do not need to be exact. And then, because people are mostly symmetrical, you're going to mirror that on the other side. And chances are you're going to have this little space and you just kept that off. And that is a perfectly serviceable person form. Anyone from any culture could recognize this as a human being. Now, the thing to make this person look more real, it's a super simple trick, is to give them something to stand on. And only those lines automatically give this the beginning of an environment and therefore a story. So once you have this form, you can start to play with it. When you draw someone sitting, I always draw them from the side because it's the only way I know how. A series of angles thinking where is this person's body and where is this person's arm. And then an L shape and an upside down T. The line they're on. And maybe this person is drinking a cup of coffee at a cafe table. And it's a little unlined up, but because I don't want to erase, because I know you guys can't, I'll just do that and say, that's fine. Gets the idea across. Here's another fairly common form, circle and line. And instead of doing the arms straight down, I'm going to give it an angle. And then just continue as before, down and up and down and up. Mirror it on the other side. And now you're going to fill in the armholes. You don't need hands. You don't need anything detailed, not even wrists. This is a person who's got their hands on their hips. And the last one we'll do together, again, circular head, little line underneath, a little bit wider. And then this one's a little loopy, again, very forgiving. I only draw forgiving things. Kind of a slight S, and around another slight S around that. And then you go through with the legs. Down. You have to kind of imagine how arm the legs would be, but like I said, it's quite forgiving. Give this person a ground to stand on. And again, you have the beginning of a story. So if you start drawing people like this in various different connections, you can start really making a story, right? Broken heart, new love, boy meets girl, boy loses girl, etc. So you can start to put these together, and human beings, we love to envision the story. So people will naturally try and understand it. All right. But this story doesn't have a lot of interestingness without some expressions and emotion. It's all implied, so let's get explicit about emotion. You'll need some space on your page for this. And on your page, you're going to draw 9 circles, all the same size, in 3 rows of 3. And in the middle of each, I'm going to put 2 dots. Exactly, like buttons. Nice. So all of our emotional expressions come from 2 places on our face. They come from our mouths and our eyebrows. So let's add those in. On the first row, going across, give everybody a smile. On the middle row, everybody a straight line. And on the bottom row, you see where we're going with this, and apparently filling in the eyes for my eyeless person, frowning. So now we have 3 happy people, 3 meh, undecided, and 3 unhappy people. So our next thing that we're going to do is in the columns, we're going to give them eyebrows. In the first column, just go ahead and leave it as is. In the second column, we're going to give everybody up eyebrows. There's 2 dashed little lines above the eyebrows. And in the far right column, we're going to give everybody here a down eyebrows. So now what you have is a facial vocabulary of emotions, right? So maybe it was raining and you're out there with your nature journal and there was just mud everywhere and you really want to go across there. That might be this. Or maybe that perfect view and all of a sudden a car comes by and parks right in the middle of it, and that might be this, right? Or maybe you're pretty pleased with what you did and you're excited about it and you feel open and curious. That might be more like this. So however you want to use the faces, when you put them on these star people, then they also start creating a story. Very simple, very quick. So let's take a little bit more time to practice this as I erase our overlap. start any time, but we're going to do, well, let's take 1 minute, and then we'll do a time check, to try and do 5 star people with expressions. They can just be standing like this. You can experiment with akimbo or with arms crossed, however you choose to do it. Just kind of notice and get into a pattern of the shapes and how to make them. How about another minute? I'm seeing nods, so yes, indeed. All right, wherever you are is where you were meant to be. So we're going to wrap that. And why don't we take a minute for a quick share so that you can see what other people are thinking and some of the things they're experimenting with. Again, we learn by observing. Thanks, Jack. You're like doing the turnaround duty. Thanks.
I said to do one for the crooked mouth, crooked eyebrows.
Nice. Yes, these are just jumping off points. How great. Hi. That's you nailed him. Fist bump. Oh, yes. That is nice. Hi. Oh, okay. You put a bed under him and you're good, you know? Nice. Oh, excellent. Adding on the hair, getting all those postures done. Whoa. Zoom man. We're women. Oh, look how expressive. Delightful.
This guy got a little long.
He's long in the face too, so it's all very much of a
I was
piece.
saying, my husband draws spring people, and their bodies are springs, and they will, the springs kind of move one way or the other. They're kind of cute.
How darling.
Yeah.
Oh, I would love to.
Yeah.
When I email you, I might ask to see some snapshots
Yes,
of that.
his springs are pretty
And
cute.
you did running, a crazy walking running person. I noticed I did not do that on the big board. Kudos to you. I'm impressed.
This is even better. Oh, I put my thumb
Okay. So you all did really interesting stuff. I do want to give you a heads up of a couple things that are going to happen as you do this. And it's natural, it's part of the learning process. And there are things to be aware of and notice when they happen, because there's a way to adjust before you get really invested in some bad habits. So the first one is making star people that look like this. Right? Now, that's accurate if you're doing a baby. because babies have disproportionate heads, but it is not an adult person. So if you're trying to communicate an adult person, this is not the way to do it. The other alternative, just the opposite, is linebacker person, star linebacker, which is really a disproportionately small head. And the way that you can correct and adjust for these is for this one, you can just keep that underline just a little bit wider than the head. That's what really sets the proportions of the shoulder. For this one, you want to make sure that you just really work on extending those arms down so that they feel like they're a good solid arm. There's no one equation for that, but once you get the arm, you'll have the legs, because there is an equation for that.
Did you say make the width of that line the width of that?
Yeah, just barely a little wider, just a little bit. And lastly, the last one is this form, which will start happening very quickly, and it means you're getting comfortable. Getting comfortable is awesome. Again, this ironically is the most star of all star people, but it's not really recognizable, kind of more crab person. So it is about making sure that that proportion, whatever distance it is kind of, this is the proportion, and then that's double. And those are the two proportions. So as long as you keep those legs twice as long as the arm, then everything else after that, all any smaller adjustments to make them aesthetically happy for you is all you need to do. But again, clear and clean is communication. So that's what we want to focus on. All right. Let's put all this into practice. So I know. So for our TED Talk, for our round one, we're going to do how about that? Open this back up. We're going to do a TED Talk. It's a 3-minute TED Talk, and you'll get to hear it a couple times. On the first round, I want you to capture the big ideas and use some of your new visual vocabulary, right? So people, if you want to use a mood word, if you want to use symbols of things or ideas, that's what you're going to focus on. It's helpful if you keep your pen moving, even if you don't know exactly what you're writing down. Sometimes one word of a phrase is all you need. So just get used to listening and watching and making marks, intentional marks, and then that's breaking through the biggest barrier, and after that it'll get interestingly different and hard in different, better ways. Okay, yes?
On one piece of paper, preferably?
Yes. It's a very short talk, so it should easily fit on one sheet of paper, and if you run out, you can always grab another one. Okay? Don't feel need to be artificially limited by the paper. All right, so kind of shake it out, get settled, focus on the big ideas. It will go fast, and that's okay. It's by design. And I picked this talk for 3 reasons. One is it's super short, so we can have multiple runs at it. The second is it doesn't really have anything to do with, quote, nature journaling. So it kind of takes you out of a comfort zone and helps you apply these new tools to new information. And the third one is it's everything about the Nature Journal Club and the community, because it's all about starting and maintaining a movement. So I think it has good, interesting information, and I hope you enjoy it. Are you guys ready? All right, let's get going.
Ladies and gentlemen, at TED we talk a lot about leadership and how to make a movement. So let's watch a movement happen, start to finish, in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons from it. First, of course, you know, a leader needs the guts to stand out and be ridiculed. But what he's doing is so easy to follow. So here's his first follower with a crucial role. He's going to show everyone else how to follow. Now notice that the leader embraces him as an equal. So now it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Now there he is calling to his friends. Now if you notice that the first follower is actually an underestimated form of leadership in itself. It takes guts to stand out like that. The first follower is what transforms a lone nut into a leader. And here comes a second follower. Now it's not a lone nut, it's not 2 nuts, 3 is a crowd, and the crowd is news. So a movement must be public. It's important to show not just the leader, but the followers, because you find that new followers emulate the followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, and immediately after, 3 more people. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point. Now we've got a movement. So, notice that as more people join in, it's less risky. So those that were sitting on the fence before now have no reason not to. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, but they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. So, over the next minute, you'll see all of those that prefer to stick with the crowd, because eventually they would be ridiculed for not joining in. And that's how you make a movement. But let's recap some lessons from this. So, first, if you are the type, like the shirtless dancing guy, that is standing alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals. So it's clearly about the movement, not you. Okay, but we might have missed the real lesson here. The biggest lesson, if you noticed, did you catch it? Is that leadership is over-glorified. That yes, it was the shirtless guy was first, and he'll get all the credit, but it was really the first follower that transformed the lone nut into a leader. So as we're told that we should all be leaders, that would be really ineffective. If you really care about starting a movement, have the courage to follow and show others how to follow. And when you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first one to stand up and join in. And what a perfect place to do that, TED. Thanks.
That was 3 minutes. A lot of info in 3 minutes. All right. So take about 1 more minute and just let the ideas that are still in your head get back down on the page and settle. And then we'll move forward. Let's take a pause and just have a short, very short conversation. I want to hear from a few of you. How was that? How did that feel in your brain?
Hard to put into pictures. Words came much easier.
Words came easier.
Well, we can use words on, was this just to put in pictures?
Words and pictures. Yep. What were you about to say?
I was going to say it's kind of interesting because I was drawing nuts. And then he's talking, and then he's talking about in your guts. I had a person, I put the guts inside the person.
Interesting. So these one words that like that's a visual image that's potent and vivid. I can capture that. And metaphoric too, right? The nuts.
Yes,
what kind of nut did you draw? I'm curious.
Like a peanut or something like that. I draw one, like this first nut, and then I drew a bunch of others that's moving nuts.
What else?
I think I always struggle with where to put the ideas that come up. For me, like the overall page is always a little bit mysterious as things appear. I watch you do that, and I'm always like, how did you know to put it there? And I'm like, what? But yeah, that idea of where do you start and follow through on the path of the page is really fascinating to me.
So let's actually move forward and talk a little about layouts.
Oh, okay.
Because I think it's helpful to at least have some experience of listening, putting it down, hearing, thinking all at once before you try and apply a pattern or a layout to it. Layouts, however, can be a terrific entryway into a more organized composition so that you know where things go in relationship to other things. And there are some patterns that sketchnoters often use, and I want to go through them because I think that they're helpful based on how you just want to capture the information. So the first pattern is linear, and this starts chronologically. It means that you might say how to start a movement at the top, and then first leader, second leader, nurture. You're just capturing it as you would be writing a page. You might add some little visual elements, but it's pretty much sequential. And that looks something like this. This is a very clean sketch note. It's all words except for some framing. And it just starts with the ideas as they start coming down. Okay? So it can be very simple. Mostly short phrases and short words rather than long phrases. The second layout is radial, which is helpful when there's one central thesis or one idea, and you can decide what that idea is. You can even decide, I'm going to start with one idea. And in a sketchnote world, this looks kind of like this. This is a common way to do it. You have a single speaker. You want to catch those quotes or those super snippets, small snippets of interestingness, or a tweetable moment if you roll on Twitter. And so these are these short little things. It's clearly not the whole talk, right? It's probably a 45-minute talk. It was just little bits that were interesting to the sketchnoter Jason. We also have this practice in nature journaling. So there's this one beauty image, and then there's these little moments around it that are kind of additive. So it's something you can directly use in this way too. There's a path, and a path is a little more free-form. You can use a path as sequence, so left to right, especially if someone says 3 steps to blah. You can use a path to do that. Paths are often connected with arrows to aid the navigation. And in a sketchnote world, Alexis Finch uses these really well and beautifully. This is not something you're going to get at a glance. But when you invest some time, you'll notice that all of the arrows are directional aids. And the only thing that's red and the only arrows are used to form a path all the way through this lecture note. And she does it in a way that when you do that, you get a sense of the path through the material as well. So she's super intentional. She puts things where she puts them, connects them with a very consistent format, and that works as a path. Now there's also in a nature journal, we're back to this one, this literally was a path. It was a boardwalk I was walking along, and we started out checking out some poop. Here's the beginning of the boardwalk. But then this is where the fungi was. This is the buckeye branching. This is where she was perched on the rail. This is where there was a riot of red. I didn't have space up here, so even though the great tree is here, I put it over here and I put an arrow, right? Because I just didn't have space. So this is my top discovery. It really was there in the path, but I can path it in the nature journal element with an arrow. And yes, there's always conventions. We start at the top, we start at the left, and you can leverage those, or you can just invent your own, and as long as they work for you. And then there's modular. Modular consists of boxes, intentional boxes. This is an excellent example of a sketchnote one, almost like a comic book. This is very helpful when someone has a talk or you're looking at material, or an article, for example, of like 10 ways to X, or 3 things you can do about Y. Right? That type of post or information is really helpful. And then you're just looking for what's the one phrase or the one image that best characterizes that lesson or that idea. This is a really helpful thing to practice on with blog posts, because they're often numbered lists, and so you can kind of get your sketch on, and it's not in real time. You can kind of read it more slowly. Really helpful tool. In a nature journal world, I use it to force myself out of my conventional thinking. This was from the retreat. It was done in pencil, and I started out with 16 ways to see something, and I added 16 boxes. I ended up with 10. That was a lot more than I thought I'd get to, so I used it as a forcing function, and then I filled in the other things with more of just basic information about where I was at, but it really forced me to look at something, and all the frames were done first. And so then I could pick an observation to really fill in, and it gave me a big sense of completion. So you can use modular very quickly in this way too, and enhance your craft. And the last one's popcorn, which is, I would call this more free-flowing or more intuitive, perhaps. And that means you put stuff where you put stuff and hope it all shakes out at some point. Sometimes it's intentional. Sometimes there's an idea. For example, in the talk that we listened to, he went through it once, but then he kind of went through it again, right, with a second set of lessons. You could put that second insights next to the first ones because they were related. Totally up to you. In a nature journaling world, it tends to look more like this. Like this it's more of a travel journal, but it's out the window of a train, which was moving. So, this house, was probably like 5 houses. Then I was like, there's that part as it's zooming by. And so I didn't have a lot of time to think composition. But what you can do afterwards is add some framing elements, add a little bit of shading, and pull it a little closer. This was really messy before the color and before some of the post work on it. And that's okay. Like, I'm okay with messy. It's a great learning thing. And I call it more of a nature journal and a sketch note because this is the path of the train, so I was trying to capture the information of that too. So you can use path in a variety of different ways, or popcorn in a variety of different ways. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have round 2. And this time, I'd like you to pick a layout. Pick one of those forms, and I can put I don't know that I have a summary list of them. Pick one that you remember, and try and put the information down in that format. So if you pick radial, it's almost going to look like a sun. It might be a central idea, and then some ideas coming out from it. If you have path, use arrows. Some simple things if you can draw 5 boxes and just fill in a box. It does not have to be a complete picture of the information, just what you heard, just little pieces of what you heard. All right, so take a moment and think, what is my layout that I'm going to explore? And then I will start the video. Oh, I see boxes already. That's a good sign. All right. I am going to start this again. We're rolling. Next time I want to turn the video off and only have sound. Next time I want to turn the video off so the second time we only hear the sound.
So ladies and gentlemen, at TED we talk a lot about leadership and how to make a movement. So let's watch a movement happen, start to finish, in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons from it. First, of course, you know, a leader needs the guts to stand out and be ridiculed. But what he's doing is so easy to follow. So here's his first follower with a crucial role. He's going to show everyone else how to follow. Now notice that the leader embraces him as an equal. So now it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Now there he is calling to his friends. Now if you notice that the first follower is actually an underestimated form of leadership in itself. It takes guts to stand out like that. The first follower is what transforms a lone nut into a leader. And here comes a second follower. Now it's not a lone nut, it's not 2 nuts, 3 is a crowd, and the crowd is news. So a movement must be public. It's important to show not just the leader, but the followers, because you find that new followers emulate the followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, and immediately after, 3 more people. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point. Now we've got a movement. So, notice that as more people join in, it's less risky. So those that were sitting on the fence before now have no reason not to. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, but they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. So, over the next minute, you'll see all of those that prefer to stick with the crowd, because eventually they would be ridiculed for not joining in. And that's how you make a movement. But let's recap some lessons from this. So, first, if you are the type, like the shirtless dancing guy, that is standing alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals. So it's clearly about the movement, not you. Okay, but we might have missed the real lesson here. The biggest lesson, if you noticed, did you catch it? Is that leadership is over-glorified. That yes, it was the shirtless guy was first, and he'll get all the credit, but it was really the first follower that transformed the lone nut into a leader. So as we're told that we should all be leaders, that would be really ineffective. If you really care about starting a movement, have the courage to follow and show others how to follow. And when you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first one to stand up and join in. And what a perfect place to do that at TED. Thanks.
So if you haven't already done this, the last thing to do is to capture at the minimum the title of the talk and the speaker and your name. Without a title, it's just like a loose page floating around. As soon as you add a title, And then later we can put a box around it. It says, this is something. And people can understand, even from the title, a lot more about what they're reading about. And you can remember where it came from. It's not just this piece that's floating about. Yes?
Is there a way to find short TED Talks to practice?
There is. You can do a search on the TED site for duration. Duration.
Okay.
Yep, and topics. So you can say things related to art and that are 6 minutes. I will give you a pro tip, and that is the longer the talk, often the easier it is to capture, because people will give you an idea and then they'll substantiate it with stories that you can choose not to capture. So you've got a 45-minute talk is always simpler or easier to do in live time than like a 10-minute talk, where it's very pruned, where every word works, right? So longer is better. And often things with numbers in the title are good because you know that they've structured their message. It's not a lot of personal storytelling, which gets harder to capture, at least for me. A really good speaker is Julian Treasure, like a treasure chest, and he speaks on topics of listening well, and he has a very structured style. So he's very clear. I think he has 3 TED Talks, and I've used those before in workshops. They work really well.
You know, the other thing is, look, for me, when I'm doing it, it's like I want to make it pretty. I want to make it perfect, right? I mean, just to look, not look sloppy or whatever. But in order to do it, to keep the momentum going and whatever, I have to get over that.
Yeah, you will. The good news is that over time, you will get more refined at different things. Not all at once, but doing a sketchnote, a raw capture, as I often call it, and then doing a refined capture without the sense of time or the constraint is a really terrific way to practice. And working not directly from the material any longer, but from the earliest capture of the sketchnote, like where would I put this? What would I add to it? And you get the thinking going, it's just not quite the intensity. And then as you do that, you see the refinements, then you can refine different things each time. I'll spend a whole day like unsucking lettering, because I get really sloppy, and then I'll revise some of those sketch notes, being very careful about the lettering, but not so careful about the pictures, So it happens iteratively. That's the way I focus. I notice nature journaling does too. Sometimes the raw capture is just that form, and then you have a little bit more time afterwards to do some refinement or some detail. Colored in, I know. And to that end, there's a vocabulary of dividers, connectors, and frames. I'm just going to put this up here for a few moments as you finish up, because you can observe, I mean, these are fairly simple to make visually, but you can observe that there's a nice range of things you can do. If it is a headline, like the title of the talk, it's very common to put it around a fancier type of frame, so something a little bit more detail signals the eye like, this is worth looking at, this is important. If you have ideas that are maybe too close together, but they're not really related, you can use one of these dividing lines, vertical or horizontal, and the harder and thicker the line, the more distinct those areas will be. You've already been through the pictures and ideas. You can use arrows, and as a quick tutorial on drawing an arrow, I'll drop down here, is if you have the thing, and on the gray pens, let's get those caps really smashed on there. Another one.
Another one's missing?
One more. You want to wait until the world gets a little more settled?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And then I'll sketch in.
I'll hop over there.
Okay.
I'm just gonna hop over there.
I got it.
I'll look at your end.
That was hers.
Okay.
Oh, no, it was her bag.
Hi. Oh, yay. Community, because I think that is, these two books are where we intersect and we overlap. So wonderful. There's also a meetup. I host a meetup monthly in San Francisco. We're trying to get one down south, so get some volunteers. So if you're interested in that, sign up for Sketchnotes SF meetup on meetup.com. and you'll get notification. Just as a note, it doesn't look like there's been a lot of activity lately. We lost our space, but we are rekindling it in April, March, April, so stay tuned. General visual practice, there's some really good resources. These are all about just being more visual in general. Sometimes they have a business flair, but if you're involved in a community pursuit or you have other groups of people, really interesting and helpful working methods there. Lettering, I struggle with it. There's the world of calligraphy and then there's the world of clear, interesting writing. I am firmly on the writing side, but these are some resources that I've really learned from, especially the Creating Letter Forms and the Speedball textbook, which I think started as a sales piece for Speedball like in the 50s, has a huge amount of lettering styles that you can adapt to be more hand lettering. Graphic recording and facilitation, we touched on this. This is about using these types of tools not as a personal practice, but in service to a group. So whole other world out there, and community groups that help that world go forward, and a couple links. And then a bunch of people I admire. You know, and I put me down there too, but most of the people that I admire or whose work you saw as some of the examples in the deck are also here. Lastly, if we can reach behind you, there's a stack of feedback forms, and trust me, every time we do this, it has changed based directly on the feedback. So I would love for you guys to fill those out. They're super simple, and when you're done, you can just put them face back on that table over there. Totally up to you. And then we'll leave it for, I know some people might have to go directly on time, but other than that, we can keep going. Jack, do you want to wrap the room?
Yep.
Oh, sorry, Annie.
Your way.
It's falling apart. Good thing the workshop.
So I think that the skill which we've been looking at here is a really, really high percentage skill. What you're doing is taking what you're thinking about and putting that back down on the page with what you observe. So as naturalists, we don't want to just be looking. We want to be observing until our observations prompt questions in us. And then our thinking about those questions, we're also putting that down onto the page. And sometimes observations themselves may be easier to put down in this form. Be playful with it, have fun with it, and it will get better with practice. So I've been only practicing this a little bit, and already I can see that this ability to kind of be listening and looking and getting something down on the page, it is getting better. So just like everything else, like the first time I tried it, like this is impossible. I can't, I mean, it doesn't work. But then just doing it again and again, it really is making a difference. So here's your homework. Here's your homework. You get to pick out your favorite 3 TED Talks or 3 TED Talks that you've always wanted to listen to, and just sketch note those TED Talks. And if you want to do one, you know, with a sort of first pass through and then refine it, you can do that. But 3 different TED Talks, and make a sketch note out of it, and experiment with these different approaches, and have fun with it. And I want to encourage everybody to also share those on the Nature Journal Club Facebook page. Also check out those resources that Kate shared. We will put up on the Facebook group and on my website links to all these resources, including the slide deck that you just saw. So I think this is an incredible stepping stone for taking our journaling and our externalizing our thinking, taking our thinking to a higher level. And that's what this is about. On behalf of the Nature Journal Club, we really want to thank you. We really appreciate what you're doing. This is from all of us, a gift to you. This is Waterproof and Tear-Proof, a guide to the birds of the kind of common birds of the San Francisco Bay Area, organized by color. So all the blue ones are
that is
together.
User-friendly, not a birder. That is fabulous.
So this is for you, and it's waterproof and tear-proof. So in case it rains, you can make a hat out of it, and it keeps you dry. So let's give it up for Kate Rutter.
Wonderful, thank you.
Folks at home, follow her on Facebook. Yes. Check out her website if anybody needs a graphic facilitator. I know a really, really good one. And thank you so much for doing this. It was absolutely wonderful. This is just terrific. Yeah.